Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Bhagavad Paramahansa Parudikacharya Ashtoto Tadashi Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Parudikacharya Ashtoto Tadashi Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Would you like to sit here and have a book? They're sitting there because they're just waiting for the deities. Is that it? You can also sit if you like. Not over there. That's the men's side. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. We separate. Yeah, we separate. That's traditional. No offense. Yeah. All right. And as we seem to be on page 294. Is that right? I'm just. It's been a while, but that looks about right. 294, the bottom. Yeah. Text number 41. How does it sound, Marcy? Look okay? Okay. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 21st day of October 2019 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 6 entitled Dhyana Yoga, the Yoga of Meditation. Text number 41 at the bottom of page 294. Prapya punna kritam lokan Ushitva Saraswati Samaha Shuchinam Shimatam Gehe Yogam bhrashto vijayate. Prapya punnakutam lokan. Ushitva shasvati samaha. Shuchinam shimatam gehe. Yoga bhrashto vijayate. Prapya punnakutam lokan. Ushitva shasvati samaha. Shuchinam shimatam gehe. Yoga bhrashto vijayate. Prapya punnakutam lokan. Ushitva shasvati samaha. Shuchinam shrimatam gehe. Yoga bhrashto vijayate. Do you want to try? Prapya punnakutam lokan. Ushitva shasvati samaha. Shuchinam shrimatam gehe. Yoga bhrashto vijayate. Prapya punnakutam lokan. Ushitva shasvati samaha. Shuchinam shrimatam gehe. Yoga bhrashto vijayate. Anyone else? I'll read the synonyms. You can read along silently. Prapya, after achieving. Punyakutam, of those who performed pious activities. Lokan, planets. Ushitva, after dwelling. Shasvatihi, many. Samaha, years. Shuchinam, of the pious. Shrimatam, of the prosperous. Gehe, in the house. Yogam bhrashtaha, one who has fallen from the path of self-realization. Abhijayate, takes his birth. Translation. Krishna speaking to Arjuna. The unsuccessful yogi, after many, many years of enjoyment on the planets of the pious living entities, is born into a family of righteous people, or into a family of rich aristocracy. Purport. The unsuccessful yogis are divided into two classes. One is fallen after very little progress, and one is fallen after long practice of yoga. The yogi who falls after a short period of practice goes to the higher planets, where pious living entities are allowed to enter. After prolonged life there, one is sent back again to this planet to take birth in the family of a righteous Brahmin, Vaishnav, or of aristocratic merchants. The real purpose of yoga practice is to achieve the highest perfection of Krishna consciousness, as explained in the last verse of this chapter. But those who do not persevere to such an extent and who fail because of material allurements are allowed, by the grace of the Lord, to make full utilization of their material propensities. And after that, they are given opportunities to live prosperous lives in righteous or aristocratic families. Those who are born in such families may take advantage of the facilities and try to elevate themselves to full Krishna consciousness. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So, Krishna is encouraging his disciple here, Arjuna. Arjuna expressed doubt that he could practice the strict process of yoga that Krishna had delineated. This is, after all, dhyana yoga, the yoga of meditation, and it involves these 8 steps. It's called Ashtanga yoga, 8 limbs. And Krishna outlined the process here. These 8 limbs involves yama, niyama. Those are the 2 first ones. Yama is proscriptions and niyama are prescriptions, moral activities. If one isn't in the mode of goodness, self-controlled, can't even begin any type of yoga. I mean, you may do some hatha yoga in any state, but to really be serious about meditative yoga, there are certain do's and don'ts, moral principles. So assume one meets those, then there is the sitting postures. One has to master these sitting postures so you can sit for hours on end and work on the mind and meditate. So that's the next, asana. Yama, niyama, asana. And then to calm the mind is this pranayama. It's become quite familiar in the West. Some of you may have practiced. I practiced for a while. Beginning pranayama. But it regulates the mind. It's very purifies the consciousness, and allows one to begin what is called pratyahara. Pratyahara is control of the senses, withdrawal of the senses from the sense objects. Now, the way Krishna describes this method, you're already withdrawn physically. You're off into some mountain cave somewhere, far away from the distractions of the city and so forth. And you're alone, but still all those memories and those desires are still in the mind. So this withdrawal, really, it's kind of an internal process of trying to withdraw the inner senses from being distracted by all these memories and these ideas. So that can take some time. And then you're ready for concentration, dharana. Dharana means you're concentrating, and Krishna says exactly what we should concentrate on here. Me in the heart. Not me, but Krishna. Krishna in the heart. So that may take some time, years to perfect that. Because that's, again, we're so conditioned over many, many births that the mind is habituated to go off on its own. It's called the manorata, the chariot of the mind. So one has to grab control of that mind, and you're all alone there, with your mind and senses and intellect. So assuming that one can make some progress there, then you can actually meditate, dhyana. And meditation, as opposed to concentration, means that there's a flow. There's actually periods when you're actually focused on the object of meditation in Krishna, although it's not completely perfect. And complete perfect meditation called samadhi, full absorption in the object of meditation of Krishna. Now that state was described back in text 20 to 23, when one experiences this highest bliss, transcendental to the material senses. One perceives the Lord. He feels there's no greater gain that can be had. You're ready to face any difficulty, including old age, disease, and death, with equanimity, because you're fixed in that consciousness. It's a very exalted state. So throughout all of the purports that Prabhupada writes to these verses, he's bringing us all the way, always back to Krishna consciousness. That the process of Krishna consciousness centered on meditating on the holy name, which is, you don't have to go anywhere. Just wherever you are, proceed with this hearing process and take up the process of Krishna consciousness will give you the same benefits ultimately. And it is practical for us. It's practical. That's the whole idea. So this process, Arjuna represents us. Arjuna represents the confused, conditioned soul in this world. He's not himself confused and conditioned, but he's placed in that state by Krishna. So Krishna can speak the Bhagavad Gita, and we can hear and benefit. So Arjuna says, quite logically, I can't practice this. This is good. I'm a soldier. He's trained to be that. He says, this is not possible for me. Chanchalam himana Krishna pramati balabhadraham tanya manya vayo ivasta dushkaram. I think that to control the mind, which is very restless and obstinate, is like trying to control the wind. Vayo is the wind, the dushkaram. So Krishna encourages Arjuna. Yes, it's difficult, but it's possible through practice, and encourages him. And then Arjuna is still very pessimistic about his ability to follow this process. Says, well, what if I fail? What'll happen? I'll go off to the mountains and I'll practice, but I won't succeed. I'll have already given up my material life here, so I'll be like a riven cloud. I'll be unsuccessful. I'm a failure then. So Krishna says, no. Whatever you achieve on this path is to your eternal benefit. And that's what these verses are about, beginning with 40. The previous verse, the Supreme Lord said, O son of Pita, a transcendentalist engaged in auspicious activities does not meet with destruction either in this world or in the spiritual world. One who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil. So this is a very important distinction between success or progress on the spiritual path and so-called progress on the material path. We're surrounded with people who are, have made a certain amount of progress on the material path. They have a certain amount of money, a certain amount of fame, position in society, and they think that, okay, I'm pretty much a success and I'm going to be more of a success. But actually, all of that so-called success is a lot of labor for nothing. Because whatever you achieve in this world, whatever money you make, whatever relationships you have, it's all finished at the time of death. It's all very temporary, destroyed by time. But spiritual assets are not destroyed by time. You carry them with you. Krishna explained that in the 2nd chapter, where he encourages Arjuna, Neha bhikramanasho sti pratyabhayo navidyate swalpamapyasya dharmasa trayate mahato bayat. Many devotees who read this verse are very encouraged because in this age, you come into touch with Krishna. I've been around a long time, 45 years. And I've seen many devotees come and many devotees go. Now, Krishna says there's nothing lost there. That whatever they have achieved, that will stand them in good stead in the next lifetime, or perhaps later in this lifetime. They come, they go, and they often come back. But whatever it is, it's a permanent asset, and that's what Krishna is saying here in the 40th verse. Then what happens? Okay, they go to the heavenly planets. If you fail to complete the course, and they enjoy there for many, many years, Ushidva Shasvati Samaha, after dwelling many, many years, and then they're born in a pious family. It's not that they're just born in any old family. They're born in a pious family or a wealthy family that's also pious, not demonic. And that the best one is a Shuchinam, a pure family. The best birth of all is in a family of devotees. Because then from very childhood, you're introduced to Krishna. I distinctly remember back in Brooklyn, this is 1973-74, I was living there, and there were many of the artists who painted these wonderful paintings, and you see in the books, they were living there then. And that was where the books were put out, in Brooklyn, New York, in Henry Street Temple, 73 through 75. And there was my worshipable painting, artist god, basically Murlidhar, whose paintings remind me of Rembrandt, one of the greatest artists in ISKCON. And he had his little baby boy, and he was holding him in front of the deity, Radha Govinda. He brought him to the Mangalarti, you could hardly see. And there, the first thing he saw was there, beautiful. This is a tremendous boon. I mean, everyone knows. Well, I don't know if everyone knows, but it's a proven fact that what you learn and get exposed to in the first 5 or 6 years is there for your whole lifetime. So, and Prabhupada said, yeah, I was born, he experienced that, and King Pariksit, was born, and the Bhagavatam is full of stories. So, that's the advantage. You don't lose anything. You come down, and then you're born in one of these families, and you can take up where you left off. Basically, you're attracted. Krishna will say in the next verse or the verse after, you don't even know why, you're attracted to it. Now, in my little history here of ISKCON, you see some devotees say how they came. What's one of the most fascinating stories? How did you become a devotee? I mean, I met a bunch of people. I was just in India for a week. I had to go to a meeting and come back. And not less than half a dozen people, asked me, how did you become a devotee? Especially in India, kind of far out. There's this guy, this old timer who's been around for 4 decades. How did you become a devotee? So I told the story a few times. But so many of the same people who I knew who were having the same experiences, they didn't become devotees, even though they were exposed to Hare Krishna. So maybe there was something in the previous life that it kind of took, suddenly. I remember this story, a friend of mine, Keshava Bharati Swami, who's a very nice devotee. He helped to edit one of the books, Brihad Bhagavatamrita. And he came across this book that we're reading now, in its 1972 edition. And he had been searching here and there. And then when he read the book, it was just like, this is it, He didn't stop reading the book until he finished. It took him like 2 days, practically 24 hours a day. And after he finished the book, he went and found a temple and joined. Now, we've literally distributed 100 million of these books over the years in different languages. You know, we don't have 100 million devotees, so it has different effect. But it obviously struck a chord from a previous life. That's what I'm saying. So that's what Krishna. He's encouraging Arjuna. He says, "Nothing is lost. You'll be born in a pious family," and so that's what's going on here. And then, in the end, in a few verses, he will really encourage Arjuna and say, well, you're already at the peak of yoga. The best yogi is one who's always thinking of me with great faith and love and so forth. Oh, okay. Now, that's a big, you can imagine the relief Arjuna felt. Well, that's what I'm already doing. So it's a very beautiful chapter. There are many teachings in this chapter that are pertinent for us as bhakti yogis. And the most important one is at the very end of the chapter. Welcome. Nice to see you. All right, if we have no questions or discussion, we can go on. Text 42. Atava yoginameva kule bhavati dimatam etad di durlabhataram loke janma yad idrisham. Or, if unsuccessful after long practice of yoga, so this 41 was about the yogi who didn't make that much progress. Oh, I'm sorry, we're on page 295. Okay. So now there's a yogi who made a lot of progress, but didn't quite reach success. Or if unsuccessful after long practice of yoga, he takes his birth in a family of transcendentalists who are surely great in wisdom. Certainly, such a birth is rare in this world. So the other ones were wealthy or a very pure family, but the yoga brashta, one who has broken his yoga. But here's someone who's made a lot of progress, but didn't quite reach the end. And now we see what his fate is. He's born in a family of transcendentalists. Purport: birth in a family of yogis or transcendentalists, those with great wisdom, is praised herein because the child born in such a family received a spiritual impetus from the very beginning of his life. It is especially the case in the Acharya or Goswami families. Such families are very learned and devoted by tradition and training, and thus they become spiritual masters. In India, there were many such Acharya families, but they have now degenerated due to insufficient education and training. By the grace of the Lord, there are still families that foster transcendentalists generation after generation. It is certainly very fortunate to take birth in such families. Fortunately, both our spiritual master, Om Vishnupad Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, and our humble self had the opportunity to take birth in such families by the grace of the Lord. And both of us were trained in the devotional service of the Lord from the very beginning of our lives. Later on, we met by the order of the transcendental system. So you find this quite common in our line, where you have whole generations of devotees being born. Lord Chaitanya's Leela is full of families of devotees, when the children are being raised. One of Lord Chaitanya's close followers, Shivananda Sain, his wife was pregnant, and Lord Chaitanya gave the name, I think he called him Puri Das, and he was born, and he very quickly became very adept at Sanskrit. And what was that verse? Yeah, I think I can remember it. So the boy is standing there, he's like 5 years old, and Lord Chaitanya says, chant, Puri, chant. And he won't chant, Hare Krishna. And Lord Chaitanya looks at his close associate, Srup Damodar, and says, I've gotten the whole world to chant Hare Krishna, this boy won't chant. What's going on? So Srup Damodar says, I think he's chanting in his mind. And so they asked him to recite a verse that he wrote. He's only 5 years old. So he chanted his verse. Let me see if I can remember. Shavaso Kuparlahi Makshno Anjana Madaso Mahendra Manidama Vindavana Ramaninam Mandanamakadam Hadir Jayati. I think that's it, which is quite a far out verse for a little 5-year-old to write. So what he's saying there is Shavaso Kuparlayam. Yes, Shavaso Kuparlayam Makshno Anjana. So he's saying that for the gopis, Krishna is all of their ornaments. He is the Shavaso Kubalayam. Yes, he's the bluish lotus that is over their ears as an ornament. Akshna Anjanam, he's the anjan, the mascara that they put on their eyes, blackish. Urutsi Mahendra, he is the emerald that they wear on their chest. He's all of their ornaments like that. In other words, they're always absorbed in Krishna. So here's this boy, who was raised by a devotee, later became a great writer, Kavi Karnapur. He wrote a play that was a model that Srila Prabhupada used to dictate a play for Hayagriva that the devotees put on. Anyway, there's a lot of families like that. If you read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the little children growing up, in devotee families. And Srila Prabhupada had that benefit. Parikshit, of course, was born as the final descendant of the Pandavas, and he saw Krishna in the womb. Krishna saved him from this weapon that had been thrown by Ashwatthama. So he was a devotee from birth, obviously. So it's a great, and Srila Prabhupada wanted his family devotees, his grahastas, to raise children like that, so that we would have a generation of pure devotees who would preach. So that's what he's saying here, that they automatically take it up. That will come up in the next verse. So this is a rare birth, and it's one of Prabhupada's blessings. He had all these disciples, many of them were householders, and then many children grew up in Krishna consciousness. Okay, text 43. Tattatam buddhi sanyogam labate parvadehikam yatate chatato bhuya sangsiddhau kurunandana. On taking such a birth, he revives the divine consciousness of his previous life, and he again tries to make further progress in order to achieve complete success, O son of Kuru. Purport. King Bharat, who took his third birth in the family of a good Brahmin, is an example of good birth for the revival of previous transcendental consciousness. King Bharat was the emperor of the world, and since his time this planet has been known among the demigods as Bharatavarsha. Formerly it was known as Ilavatavarsha. The emperor, at an early age, retired for spiritual perfection, but failed to achieve success. In his next life, he took birth in the family of a good Brahmin and was known as Jadabharat because he always remained secluded and did not talk to anyone. And later on, he was discovered as the greatest transcendentalist by King Rahugana. From his life, it is understood that transcendental endeavors, or the practice of yoga, never go in vain. By the grace of the Lord, the transcendentalist gets repeated opportunities for complete perfection in Krishna consciousness. Now, Prabhupada kind of abridged the story here. I don't know if you know. Do you know the story of King Bharat? He, as mentioned, he was a tremendous emperor of the whole world, and he gave up the kingdom at an early age. Usually they give up the kingdom when they're, older. But he gave it up early, and he meditated. He practiced this meditative yoga, but he's meditating on Krishna. And he was all alone in the forest, and he achieved what is called the state of bhava, which is just before prema, which is the final goal of bhakti. So he's meditating, and suddenly he hears this commotion nearby. There's a little stream nearby. And what it is a deer running from a lion, a pregnant deer. So this pregnant deer runs, and lions apparently don't go in the water. So he just made it into the river, into the stream, and the lion couldn't follow the deer, but was still terrorized, and swam across the little stream there, fell on the other bank, and gave birth, but expired. So now you have this little fawn, this helpless little fawn, who's, I don't know what sounds they make, but I'm sure they're very plaintive. And there's, of course his meditation was broken, and so he's looking, and there's this little fawn. So naturally, being a soft-hearted devotee, he took up the fawn, and the fawn knew only Bharat as his mother. So then he had to find some way to feed that fawn, and gradually, so he developed naturally a very great affection for this fawn. And then when he went to meditate, he was always wondering, well, where is that fawn? Is he in trouble? Or the fawn would come and nibble at his ear. Come on, let's go play, or whatever. In other words, he became distracted by this fawn. And eventually he left his body. Bharat died, and he became a deer. He was born as a deer. But because of his advancement, he could remember the previous life. So he describes to King Mahugana, it's mentioned that he taught him, that he didn't hang out with the ordinary deer and do deer things. He would try to find some ashram where there's some devotees who were speaking about Krishna, and he would listen. And so, and then when he was reborn, he's born as Jadabharata. He wasn't called Jadabharata, but that's what we know him as. And he pretended to be foolish because he didn't want to get distracted. And so he goes through various adventures. But he always remembered Krishna, and he remembered this, not fall down, but the deviation that he had. And one of the lessons that came out there is that he went alone, and he didn't have good association. See, in bhakti yoga, you don't go alone. There's some sadhana that you do alone, like chanting, but mostly you're together with other devotees, hearing and chanting about Krishna, serving together, putting on a big festival, whatever it is. The more the merrier. Let's have a kirtan with 1,000 devotees, It'd be greater. So he was alone, and therefore he was prey to Maya's distraction in this case. But he's a good example of taking birth in a family of devotees, because then when he took his third birth there, Bharat, deer, and then Jadabharat, there were Brahmins and devotees, and then he eventually, at that birth, he went back to God and had this whole interaction with King Rahugana, in which he preached, and it's all in the 5th canto, very wonderful instruction. There's one very nice verse from the King Bharat that says at the end of one chapter, he says, Tasman naro sangha susanga. He's talking about sangha, which he didn't have as the sole, yogi. Tasman naro sangha susanga jata gyanasine naiva vivikta moha haring tariha katana shrutabhyam labda smritirya titipanam hodvana. That doesn't work. That's all right. You can sit on a chair if you need to. Are you okay? Yeah, please, no problem. Yeah. So what this verse says is he says, therefore, by these two processes of sadhu sangha, associating with devotees, and giving up association with non-devotees. There's two sides of that. Asanga and susanga. Su means good. A means not. Not associating with non-devotees and associating with devotees or sadhus. One can develop the sword of knowledge. Gyanasina. Asina is a sword, with which you can cut all of the illusions. The illusion is like a net that completely binds us to this world. Vivrikna means cutting moha. But that's not the end of it. Then, by haring tariha katana shrutabhyam, by hearing and repeating the lila, the pastimes of Krishna, and his form and qualities, his holy name. In other words, hearing and chanting. One will, there's two meanings to the next phrase, labda smriti. Labda smriti means you gain remembrance. Now Prabhupada interprets this as you regain your remembrance of Krishna, which we forgot long ago. In other words, that's where we came from. That's why Prabhupada, he made famous this phrase, go back home, back to Godhead. This was much more common when in the old ISKCON. Everyone was thinking, we're going back home, back to Godhead. It's not so easy. But that's really where we're all headed. Now that means that's where we came from. If you're going back, you came from there, right? So it means regaining or reviving something that we've lost and forgotten. All that knowledge is within us. It just needs to be revealed by the purification process. So haring tariha katana shruta. Katana means chanting and shrutabhi means hearing. Labda smriti. And yati atipadam advana means you nicely go back home to the spiritual world. Now, Vishwanath Chakrabarti, who's another great acharya in our lines beside Prabhupada, he says this means you gain constant remembrance of Krishna. In other words, this is a goal. It's not easy because there are so many distractions. But when you become fully saturated with Krishna consciousness, you don't forget Krishna at any moment. Every breath, every movement that you make is one of service to Krishna. It's not motivated by any personal material desire, karmic desire. This is the perfection of Krishna consciousness. So either way, it's a wonderful verse. And in the little purport, Prabhupada said, this is why we've started this ISKCON society. We invite people to come, join the ashram, we train them up and send them back to God. So I can give you the reference of that. Okay, we have time for one more here. This verse has a very nice verse in the purport that we'll talk about too. Or are we on 43? No, we did 43. 44. Purvabhyasena tenaiva riyate yavashopi saha jigyasurapi yogasya shabda brahmati vartate. By virtue of the divine consciousness of his previous life. Now you have to understand, just to let you know, Prabhupada learned English in the early 20th century from the British. And so in those days, the male pronouns were used for both, So by virtue of the divine consciousness of his or her previous life. You understand? This is just a way of speaking to him. By that virtue of that divine consciousness, he automatically becomes attracted to the yogic principles, even without seeking them. Such an inquisitive transcendentalist stands always above the ritualistic principles of the scriptures. Purport. Advanced yogis are not very much attracted to the rituals of the scriptures, but they automatically become attracted to the yoga principles, which can elevate them to complete Krishna consciousness, the highest yoga perfection. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 3:33-7, such disregard of Vedic rituals by the advanced transcendentalist is explained as follows. This verse is spoken by Devahuti, the mother of Kapila Dev. He's teaching her, and then she glorifies here those who are simply chanting the holy name, chanting your holy name. Kapila is Krishna. Aho bata shapachoto gariyan yajjigbhagre vartate namatubhyam te pusta puste juhuvu sasnaraya brahmanuchu namagunanti yete. O my Lord, persons who chant the holy names of your Lordship are far, far advanced in spiritual life, even if born in families of dog-eaters. Such chanters have undoubtedly performed all kinds of austerities and sacrifices, bathed in all the sacred places, and finished all scriptural studies. The famous example of this was presented by Lord Chaitanya, who accepted Thakur Haridas as one of his most important disciples. Although Thakur Haridas happened to take his birth in a Muslim family, he was elevated to the post of Namacharya by Lord Chaitanya due to his rigidly attended principle of chanting 300,000 holy names of the Lord daily. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Now that 300,000 names, that's 192 rounds. When Prabhupada began this movement, he expected the devotees to chant 64 rounds a day. This was his first instruction. 64 rounds a day is roughly 100,000 names if you multiply it out. They came back and said, there's no way we can chant 64 rounds. Not if you want us to do anything else, Srila Prabhupada. They had just gotten their beads. Their beads were like this big. They got them from the 5 and dime, Nobody had been to India. I mean, Prabhupada had been to India, but he didn't bring back a box of beads. And so they had strung them personally, and they were chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. You know how long it takes to chant a round at that speed? Maybe 15 minutes. 15 minutes times 64. That's already that's 16 hours just to chant 64 rounds. So it wasn't possible. So Prabhupada said 32 rounds in. Okay, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. They came back. Can't do it. 16 rounds, the absolute minimum, and that's what it's been ever since. So Haridas Thakur, all he did was chant. Now Prabhupada once said that he chanted 16 hours. To get to 192 rounds at 16 hours means 5 minutes a round, if you multiply it out. That's quite a clip. I've tried it. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hard to hear every name, but he was hearing every syllable, I heard that he would chant 64 rounds loudly, 64 just on the tongue, and 64 in his mind, And he heard every syllable. So he was the Namacharya. And because he chanted the holy name of the Lord constantly, it is understood that in his previous life he must have passed through all the ritualistic methods of the Vedas known as the Shabda Brahma. Unless, therefore, one is purified, one cannot take to the principles of Krishna consciousness or become engaged in chanting the holy name of the Lord, Hare Krishna. So it's a fact, Prabhupada said that, sometimes he said that my spiritual master has sent all of you, and sometimes he said that I've made you good fortune. But one way or another, we had something in our background that we became attracted to Krishna. It's still a very small number of people who are attracted to Krishna. It's growing, but there are billions of people, and it's a great fortune to have that attraction. The process of Krishna consciousness begins with that attraction. It's called Shraddha. Adhau Shraddha means beginning comes faith, and that faith, Prabhupada said, is just interest and respect. Enough respect or interest to come to the temple or to open a book or Google Hare Krishna, something or other turning your mind. And if you allow yourself to become more curious and interested, that's our great fortune. The greatest fortune is to have an interest in Krishna. Because after all, what does the Vedanta Sutra say? Atato Brahma Jigyasa. We should always remember, Prabhupada's name is Bhakti Vedanta. And Vedanta Sutra. Vedanta means the end of knowledge, the culmination of knowledge. And Prabhupada's very name means that he realized that the end of all knowledge is pure love for God. Bhakti Vedanta. So the first sutra, little aphorism, the very easy one to learn. Atato Brahma Jigyasa. This word Jigyasa means curious, inquisitive. Now then, having become a human being, not an animal, you should be inquisitive into Brahman, the absolute truth. Not this ever-changing world, but that which underlies it all, the source of everything. That's defined in the second sutra. What is that Brahman? Janmad yasya yataha. This is a simple definition. That from which everything comes, which is the source of everything, and which sustains everything, and into which everything merges after the dissolution. Now, how are we going to find out that? Third sutra, Shastra Yonitvat. The Shastra, the scripture, revealed scripture, is the source of knowledge about this Brahman. You can't find it by the scientific method. These senses and mind are too imperfect and too weak to reach that. We have to consult the Shastra from those who have realized the Shastra. And that's the basis of this whole movement. Because that Vedanta Sutra has its natural commentary in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Purana. It starts with the same words. Janmadyasya yataha. That's the second sutra. The first verse of the Bhagavatam. Janmadyasya yatonvayadatatashtartesha. It explains, it's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the source. It's not some impersonal force or white light. It's the Supreme Person. And that Supreme Person is who we're trying to know. So that's... So he's encouraging Arjuna here. Here, by virtue of divine, his previous life automatically becomes attracted. So, who knows? Maybe that's how this movement has grown. Some who had some agyata sukriti. You know what agyata sukriti means? Who can say? So sukriti means, in this case, it means spiritual piety, some pious activity. Just like in now, there's so many people. I knew one devotee said, yes, whoever I meet on the street, I ask them the time. Can you give me the time? And everyone said, yeah, sure, it's 9:30. So they just did some service for a devotee. And that service is in their bank account, you see? They don't know what they've done. It's agyata, it means unknowing service. But that's in your bank account. That means next life you may do some more service, but if that's all you do, if that's from 1% or 1/2 of 1%, you'll start from there. So that's the whole idea here, is that nothing is ever lost, and it eventually culminates in pure Krishna consciousness. All right, we're making good progress. Text 45. Prayatnad yatamanastu. All right, let's try that again. You can chant. Prayatnad yatamanastu. Yogi sangshuddha kilbishaha. aneka janma samsiddhas tato yati padam gatim. And when the yogi engages himself with sincere endeavor in making further progress, being washed of all contaminations, then ultimately achieving perfection after many, many births of practice, he attains the supreme goal. Purport. A person born in a particularly righteous, aristocratic, or sacred family becomes conscious of his favorable condition for executing yoga practice. With determination, therefore, he begins his unfinished task, and thus he completely cleanses himself of all material contaminations. When he is finally free from all contaminations, he attains the supreme perfection, Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is the perfect stage of being freed of all contaminations. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 7.28. Yesham tvandakatam papam jananam punyakarmanam te dvandamohani mukta patante mam jadarvataha. After many, many births of executing pious activities, when one is completely freed from all contaminations and from all illusory dualities, one becomes engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So this word sang shuddha kilbisha, you see that in text 45? We kind of, as we live in this world, in ordinary life, we accumulate sins. We accumulate karmic reactions. And if our activities are not according to the rules and regulations of the Vedas, then they're what is called kilbisha, or sins. And these kind of weigh us down. We're carrying those forward from one life to the next, one life to the next. And so, and in ordinary life, without any guidance and without any structure and discipline, we commit more sins. And if we can very easily lose the human form of life. The human life is a great gift. We all come to the human life. We as spirit souls. We're not the body. None of us are the bodies that we see here. These are just temporary coats and temporary coatings on the soul. So we have two bodies. One is this gross body and the subtle body. Subtle body is really what counts, because the subtle body doesn't die when the gross body dies. It carries you to your next gross body. Now, if the subtle body is completely spiritualized by Krishna consciousness, then you've awakened to your spiritual body. You don't get another material body. That's liberation. That's mukti. Muktir hitbandita rupam swarupena vivastati. This is defined in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Real mukti, which we should aspire for in human life, means giving up all these other bodies. Just like even in this one body, this is right at the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, we have many bodies. I mean, the body I see in the mirror now isn't the body I saw when I was 13. There's some resemblance, right? But it's a whole different body. A different height, different everything, weight, different ideas. Even the subtle body has changed. So the idea is to give up all of this change of body, which is very painful and suffering. Krishna says we should be serious, chapter 13, and he says, Janma mrityu jara vyadi dukkha doshano darshanam. We should see and be aware of the evils of birth, old age, disease, and death, which inevitably come. And we should inquire, how can we solve this problem? Most people think, well, we can't solve it. All we can do is try to deal with it as it comes, right? And have the best health insurance as we can, and make sure we have our reservation in the plot where my mother and grandfather are buried. It's no solution at all. Nobody even thinks about it. Most people don't even think that they're souls, not the body. But that's the first lesson. So here Krishna says, Sam Shuddha Kilbisha means completely purified of all these sinful reactions. And that means you're well on your way, Param Gatim, at the end of the verse. Param Gati means the supreme goal. So the whole process of Krishna consciousness is one of purification. It's purification. And that's why even externally, like this ashram, we try to, cleanliness, mode of goodness. In the mode of goodness you can practice Krishna consciousness because it requires control of the senses, control of the mind. So that's the first stage. But real purification is taking place within the heart. And here he says, Samshuddha, completely purified, aneka janma, many births. He's saying this may take many births. But then, tato yati padam gatim. So Krishna is encouraging Arjuna. Is that, yes, this process, you can go, you'll go back. So Krishna is encouraging Arjuna, but the greatest encouragement will come at the end of the chapter when he says, Arjuna, you're already the best yogi. You're always thinking me with love, And then the next chapter, which begins the essential middle 6 chapters. Prabhupada pointed out that the Bhagavad Gita is, the essence of it is in these chapters 7 through 12. 12 is all about Bhakti Yoga. It's entitled Bhakti Yoga. Because in 7, he begins to describe how any of us can learn how to make our mind attached to Krishna just by living in this world and changing how we see it. Not just seeing the sun and the moon and everything else, but seeing it as Krishna's energy. And having a motive, if possible, to engage it in Krishna's service. That perfects that seeing. If we don't do that, then we begin to see it as things that we might be able to enjoy. And that's Maya. That prolongs our sojourn in this material world. Okay, so we're almost out of time. I'll end with a couple of little verses that I wrote. And tomorrow we can finish this chapter. Before you go on your trip, how long you going? Where you going? India? What, to do some relief work? Is it still going on? They had some big, heavy... you should check. They had tornadoes there and everything. Double check. Don't you go there and you go. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So here's a little verse based on a verse by Rishabdev, who's an incarnation of Krishna, and he speaks in the 5th canto, 5th chapter, text 1, which is a very important verse. And I'll just give you my little English rendition. It says, "Don't waste this precious human life, dear friend, by working hard for hoggish happiness. Through bhakti yoga, worldly life transcend and learn to taste divine love's endless bliss." And here's another one, a meditation on Krishna in the forest. He's sitting there and he's got a little dove on his hand, and there's a cow and there's a deer. It's a very idyllic scene. The sweetness of Shri Krishna's form beguiles. Still sweeter is his face like autumn moon. But sweeter than the sweetest is his smile, whose luscious beauty makes the gopis swoon. Govinda's beauty captivates the doves, the swans, the deer, the cows, and every tree. Indeed, in Braja, every creature loves Shri Krishna and is drowned in ecstasy. That all-enchanting land is paradise, our home, where we may dwell eternally. Most welcome there are those who pay the price to learn to love Shri Krishna perfectly. And there you have. Now we can anticipate the opening of the curtains and see Krishna's beautiful face and form. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.